Please sit down. Pranam and loving greetings to all of you. It's so good to see you again. And I'm going to take a deep breath because it's a joy to be with you, and it's breathtaking to look at your glowing faces middle of the week of convocation. And also a most loving welcome to those of you who are joining us virtually from all parts of the world. We had a most beautiful meditation this morning with Brother Chidanandaji. I don't know about you, but it opened my heart. And I think, yes? And I think it was a perfect preparation for what we will discuss tonight. Becoming instruments of divine love. And I thought maybe we could just establish one foundational truth, one spiritual truth, and that is that everything our soul has ever longed for can be described in two words. What are they? Divine love. Everything. And let's reflect on that for a moment, because every search for happiness, every longing for acceptance, for belonging, for connection, beneath all those desires lies one deep longing, and that's our soul's longing to experience and to express God's love. Do you agree? The difficulty is that we forget where to look for it. We sometimes look for it in people, in relationships. We sometimes look for it in possessions, maybe wealth, or we look for it in success, achievements, and sometimes we look for it in just the right circumstances. And all of these, they have their place, and they can bring us moments of blessing and joy, no doubt. But the one thing as devotees on the path that we want to remember is that the Lord has so arranged this life that nothing outside of ourselves and nothing outside of Him will ever be able to fully satisfy us. And I think that's why Jesus pointed us in the right direction when He proclaimed one of the greatest truths ever revealed to humanity. The kingdom of heaven is within you. And our Guru, Paramahansa Yogananda explained that hidden deep within the recesses of our soul lies an inner kingdom of divine consciousness, where God's living, loving presence and His all-fulfilling infinite love already reside within us. And when we touch that divine love, when we access it, when we immerse our consciousness in it, that's when our inner transformation begins. That's when our heart's defenses begin to soften. That's when our sense of separation from others begins to fade. And then that divine love within us can't be contained. It flows out into the world. And it sweetly and subtly uplifts the atmosphere, isn't it? And it transforms every life that it touches. And that is the power of divine love. So our spiritual task is not really to create love. It's to awaken our heart and consciousness to it. But now let's ask ourselves this question, and we're going to be asking a lot of questions tonight. If that divine love is already within us, what's hiding it? To answer that question, let's begin where most of us begin, with human love. In fact, someone asked me recently, "Sister, can you explain the difference between ordinary human love and divine love?" Well, that's a vast subject, but we'll touch on it tonight. Human love can be one of life's sweetest experiences. It can bring us moments of joy and blessing. It can. It can also be one of our greatest teachers, showing us where we need to change, where we need to grow, isn't it? And sometimes human love is also mixed with expectation, dependency, and sometimes even fear. We fear losing the ones we love. We fear being rejected. We fear not being enough. And sometimes human love is self-centered. We can hear ourselves saying, well, am I being understood? Am I being appreciated? Am I getting what I want? Have you ever heard that? And sometimes we enter into relationships to fill some void within ourselves. Because sometimes you hear people say, oh, they complete me. It's good to laugh. But it sounds romantic, doesn't it? But what it really means is, I don't feel whole without them in my life. But the truth is, no one can complete us because we were never incomplete to begin with. We may still be learning self-acceptance, working on self-confidence, self-love, but as the soul, we are whole. Now, divine love, by contrast, it's not fearful. It doesn't rise and fall when expectations are met or not, or when circumstances change. And it's not possessive. Divine love naturally flows out. It has this impulse to give without asking anything in return. And I want to share an example of someone that we wouldn't necessarily consider. That someone I'm thinking of is Swami Sri Yukteswarji, the guru of our guru, the Gyanavatar, who is known to have a very exacting nature. But we have to remember that all true masters are actually embodiments of divine love. And so beneath that firm exterior was a very soft and tender heart who watched over his disciples with angelic tenderness. And you remember when Sri Yukteswarji and Guruji first met in Varanasi in that little small alleyway? Sri Yukteswarji said to Guruji, young Mukunda, he said, "Oh, my own, you have come to me." He said this again and again, "Oh, my own, you have come to me. How many years I have waited for you." And Guruji said, he said it with tremulous joy in his voice, such depth of feeling. And then Sri Yukteswarji takes Mukunda by the hand, and they walk to his hermitage. And like a father to a son, he says to him, I shall give you my hermitages and all that I possess. And Mukunda says, I come for wisdom and God realization. Those are your treasure troves I am after. And Sri Yukteswarji gives him his greatest treasure. I give you my unconditional love. And then with childlike trust, he asked Mukunda, will you give me that same unconditional love? And Mukunda says, I will love you eternally, Gurudev. That sacred exchange between two exalted souls, offering so much respect and honor and unconditional love, that is the ideal. So delicate and tender and real. Imagine that's all they talked about at their first meeting. They loved each other. When we learn to love purely like that, when we understand what divine love really is, then we can say to our loved ones, I honor you. I honor your soul. And I honor the sacred journey you are walking. So beautiful. All right, so here's a question we're going to ask ourselves, another one. If divine love is already within us, then what causes us to lose touch with it? Can you think of what that is? I think we all know that feeling. Sometimes our heart is open and love is flowing, isn't it? And then a hurt or a misunderstanding happens, and suddenly our heart closes. And we find ourselves asking, why can't I feel love? Why can't I respond with kindness and tenderness? Why is my heart so closed? One of the most, now we're going to get down to the real problems here. One of the most common causes for the heart to close, to shut down, and there are a number, but we're going to focus on this one, is finding fault with other people. You know, someone disappoints us deeply, and before we know it, we're focused on whatever's wrong with that person. And we have to be very watchful of that, because if that becomes a habit, then criticism takes hold. And we have this negative, critical attitude. And then we lose all sense of self-awareness, and we're focused on them. You know, they have to change. They have to change. And at least I'm not like that. And I see what's wrong, so I must be right. It's good to laugh at ourselves. We've all done it. That's the human mind, isn't it? That's not the soul speaking. But we cannot lose sight of self-awareness and self-reflection. And when we find ourselves in a situation like that, we have to stop and say, how can I understand this situation more deeply? How can I understand this person better? And where do I have to make an adjustment? Where do I have to change? How can I grow? And, you know, sometimes we're criticizing, but sometimes we're the recipients of criticism. And so what happens when someone hurts us and misunderstands us, and they don't see our heart? They don't see our heart. And we have to ask ourselves, what does divine love look like then? Our revered Sri Dayamataji, our late president in Sangamata, shared with us how she handled a situation. When she was a young nun, there was a lady visitor who came to Mother Center, and she undertook the task of refurnishing the devotees' rooms, but she excluded Dayamata's room. And of course, Ma wasn't bothered by that because she didn't come for material comforts. But Guruji was always quick to notice any unfairness, explained to Ma, just for her understanding, that the reason the woman had that attitude was simply jealousy. And then Ma said she remembered something Guruji had said to her and to the disciples on how to behave toward others who don't like us. He said, no matter how they treat you, go on giving them love. And Ma did just that. And sometime later, the woman poured out her heart and confessed to Ma, I resented you because of your spiritual enthusiasm, which I didn't have. Yet despite how I treated you, you've shown me understanding and friendship. Now, because Ma's heart remained open, she won over that woman, didn't she? But Ma did something else. She protected her consciousness. She didn't retaliate, and she didn't allow another person's negativity to enter in. And that's something to take note of. And what I took away from this lesson was something that was invaluable for me to understand, and that is, divine love is not naive. It's guided by discernment, the wise discrimination to know what serves the soul best, our soul and their soul. Because without discernment, we may think, well, what feels the most loving right now? Or your love becomes sentimentality, emotion, and you think, well, if I really love, then I have to go on enduring, no matter how I'm treated. But divine love does not mean continued closeness. Sometimes the best approach is to step back, to hold that person in your heart in prayer, but to wish them well from a distance. And that is discernment. And when we do that, what happens? We have peace of mind. We've set a boundary. We have peace of mind. And inner peace is so precious, we have to protect that. We have to protect it. And criticism disturbs that inner peace. We'll focus on criticism just a little bit longer. It's not the most pleasant, but this is important because when we criticize, we do not get a free pass. Criticism doesn't just remain out there somewhere. It returns back to us as a subtle, uneasy feeling within. Have you ever felt that? You know, you were introspecting, you think, no, that was not right. And that's good reflection. Now, criticism creates a vibration of separation, and separation is the opposite of divine love. So now let's ask another question. What attitudes can help us preserve an open and loving heart? Lord Krishna, in the Bhagavad Gita, speaks of the freedom that comes when we let go of fault-finding. And you know, that idea might seem somewhat radical in today's society, isn't it? The way the world views people in life. But Guruji brought this truth to life with a vivid illustration. And try to visualize it as I describe it. He says, a habitual critic is like a fly that settles on the moral sores of others. But a true devotee is like a bee who sips the honey of good qualities from the hearts of his companions. So sweet and so beautiful, isn't it? The honeybee does not deny imperfection. It simply chooses not to dwell there. It seeks what is noble, what is sincere, what reflects the soul's integrity. And so now I'm going to give you a spiritual assignment. The next time that you see a beautiful soul quality, the next time you sip that from the heart of your companion, remember this: you are not just observing a personality trait. You are witnessing a soul quality that has been practiced, nurtured, tested, and refined over many lifetimes, until it has now become an unshakable part of that person's inner being. And when you observe that, don't you silently say, "Oh, I wish I could be like that." When you view people in that light, when you look at those good qualities, look for those good qualities, it changes your whole perspective. You focus away from judging, and it expands your heart, and it awakens compassion, especially for those who you see who are not yet expressing their soul qualities. Compassion is so important. Compassion is an aspect of divine love. It's not just a mere feeling. What is compassion? It's a kind, awakened heart that recognizes our shared humanity. You know, you see someone struggling, and you think, that must be hard. I know what it is to struggle. I know what it is to suffer. I know what it is to be a human being. I understand you, and I'm here for you. Who amongst us hasn't longed for that kind of understanding and love when we're struggling? Have you ever felt that way? I have many times. And you know, most people already know where they're falling short, and what they need is a heart that will reach out and encourage them and support them. So let us be the ones to uplift, to open our heart, let that compassion flow, and encourage those close to us whenever there is a need. You know, there's a beautiful story, one of my favorites, of our beloved Lahiri Mahashaya that illustrates this beautiful quality of compassion. And Guruji said of Lahiri Mahashaya that he was the personification of kindness, of graciousness, and compassion, and that his words were mild and healing even when he was chastising a disciple. And on one occasion, he gave Kriya Yoga initiation to a man who had been known to be struggling deeply. And when the other disciples heard about this, they became a little unsettled. And they went to Lahiri Mahashaya and asked him, thinking that maybe he didn't know about the man's past. Human nature. And Lahiri Mahashaya just smiled at them and said, if I had not given it to him, he would have become worse. Compassion. And I love this story because It shows the nature of a true guru sent by God. No matter how far we've strayed away from God, how lost we get sometimes, He never defines us by our mistakes. Never. He sees our soul, always looks to our soul, and His blessing and His grace will always be there to smooth the way for the other. That is the compassion of God. That's what you see in the great ones, in Jesus, in Guruji, in Babaji, Lardi Mahashai, Shuyuk Tesruji. Look to them as your example. Because as we nurture love and compassion, we become magnets, and we draw true friends to ourselves, those who share similar spiritual and moral values as we do. And you know, when I reflected on Guruji's teachings, I was so struck by the importance that he gave to divine friendship. He saw it as a sacred, essential part of the spiritual journey. He saw it as a sacred, essential part of our spiritual journey. And you'll see as we go along what I mean. You know, meditation is where we go to experience God's love. But we are not meant to keep that love only for ourselves. We are called to become instruments of divine love. And divine friendship is one of God's most beautiful gifts to us. Because do you think He doesn't arrange situations to attract to ourselves those who share the same spiritual love for God and the same goals? And it's through those friendships that He teaches us how to love as He loves. And how He encourages us to walk hand in hand with our divine friends on our journey back to God. I love that saying, walk hand in hand. Merlini Mata used to say that all the time to us. Walk hand in hand, my dears. Don't let go of each other's hands. You know, Master called friendship the grandest of human loves. The grandest of human loves, because it's freely given. You're never obligated when you befriend someone. And Guruji had a heart that welcomed everyone. He was so open. He had such a magnanimous, loving, giving heart. And even people that he met for the first time, they would say, well, we felt as though we had known him always. And you know why that was? Because he looked far beyond outer appearance, far beyond their station in life, far beyond the stories they told themselves to themselves and to others. He saw the soul, and he would say, consider no one a stranger. He would say, feel that everyone is akin to you. Akin means we are not separate from one another. We are brothers and sisters. We belong to each other. We are children of God. We are members of this beautiful spiritual family, and we are all connected by that same divine essence. Think about that. Now I want you to just stop for a moment and look around. We're connected. We belong to each other. Look at each other. Love each other. Can you conceive of it? It's awesome. And I want to share an example of how Guruji expressed his divine love and friendship. You know, in a very personal way, he always was very personal with people. He loved people, we know that. And, you know, he rarely used the divine powers that God had given to him. And when he did, though, it was always to help someone in need. And during a lecture series in the city of St. Louis, there was a woman who couldn't read or write. And so naturally, her world became very small. The only job she could hold was serving in a cafe or washing dishes. And one day, she saw a stack of leaflets in the cafe. Someone had left them there. And they drew her in. And she picked up one of the leaflets, and she went to her manager. She was a little afraid of him. And she said, "What does this say? And who is she?" You know who she was referring to, and he replied, "Well, it's not a she, it's Swami Yogananda. And he's giving a lecture tonight." And it was already 8 o'clock, and the lecture had begun, and her heart was pounding, and she asked him, "May I go?" And he, to her surprise, he said yes. So she hurried and went to the lecture hall, and she quietly entered and sat down. And then just a few moments after that, Guruji comes out onto the stage. And before he begins speaking, he says, "Is the lady who cannot read or write here yet?" And she stood up, and he looked at her, and he beamed with love at her, and she beamed back. And for several long seconds, nothing existed, just soul recognition. And then he said gently, "I would like to speak with you after the class." She came forward afterwards, and he looked at her kindly, and he said, "You can't read or write, can you?" And she nodded and listened to what he said. "Well, I'll teach you." And he meant it. For the next 2 weeks, she attended his lectures each evening, and afterwards, Guruji would stay for 30 more minutes just for her. And he invested his time and his attention and his love because he saw in her a soul ready to evolve. And I'm sure he wasn't just explaining the teachings. He was blessing her that she might draw closer, she might awaken and draw closer to God. That's divine love. That's how Master loves us individually. And he responds to our every need. And I said earlier, he often responds to our urgent need, but I have found in my 50-plus years on the path that he responds to every need, large or small. And the beautiful thing is, think about this, we each have the capacity to love like that. So here's another little homework assignment we can implement today. And the one I gave you earlier should be implemented today too. Ask yourself, who can I bless today? Who can I bless today? With a listening ear, with a kind, encouraging word. And as I said earlier, when we reach out like that, we grow, we benefit, our heart expands. And again, we draw those divine souls into our lives to help us, to be our friends. Guruji, you know, as I said, he placed a lot of importance in friendship. And when he met certain souls, he would say, that he would feel this immediate inner recognition that they had already been together in past lives and they had come together in this life for some divine purpose. And he described how at times he would look out into a crowd and he would say, "There is one who has heard my call. There is one who has heard my call." And then when he would meet them, he would express with such deep feeling, he would say, "Oh, at last I have found you again. We've been together before. Why did you wait so long?" It reminds me of what Sri Yukteswarji said to Mukunda, right? And he would say, "As I look at your faces, I cannot help but feel that somewhere, sometime in the distant past, you heard this voice before, and that call has brought you here again." So let's reflect for a moment, because out of the millions in the world, and out of the countless paths we could have taken, how blessed we are that we heard his call and we've been brought together again to his feet, to his lotus feet, and hear this beautiful convocation of souls, each one wanting to draw closer to God and Guru. And you know, when a master comes to earth, he doesn't come alone. God sees to it that he gathers souls around him who have been prepared for lifetimes to help him fulfill his mission. And Gurudev once confided to a disciple this very deeply touching comment about Dayamata and Anandamata and Mrinalini Mata. He said, and he's using their secular names, they hadn't taken sannyas yet, he said, "I called Faye, Virginia, and Myrna from the causal." Now, for those of you who don't know, the causal realm is the highest heavenly realm of creation. Very exalted souls reside there. And he called them from the causal. He said, "But I don't tell them because they would want to go back, and they have a lot of..." And they have a lot of work to do first. And indeed, these souls were pillars of our Guruji's mission. And I want to share what he said about them as well. He said, "I have nurtured them with my ideals. They reflect my thoughts and my perceptions. They are considerate of me and I of them. I have planted my life in them, and the divine friendship we share is an eternal bond in God." Importance of divine friendship. True friends, our true friends, are also eternal bonds in God. And Master's words were so tender and so profound. He imparted to them his God realization. And he not only shared the teachings, gave them the teachings, but he imparted to them his life, the light of God, and the love that he embodied. And that life, that light, that love was a living force in them that inspired them to live not for themselves, but for something larger than themselves, to fulfill the mission that he entrusted to them. That you and I could avail ourselves to these teachings. I was blessed to witness the divine friendship among those early disciples, Dayama, Anandama, Mrinalini, and others. divine souls. And on one occasion, I remarked to Merlini Ma how deeply I admired the friendship that she shared with Ma and Anandama and others. And she smiled and she said, "Yes, our friendship is deep, and we would go to the ends of the earth for one another." And she said, to be divine, unconditionally loving friends, encouraging, forgiving, and supporting one another, that is what strengthens us as a united spiritual family. Think about that in your homes, in your centers, in your groups, with your friends. And then she added Master's words, what he shared with them. These words are so powerful. Stand solidly together, never enter into quarrels. When times of difficulty come, gather together and you will find great strength. And this last statement, a mysterious power will help you if you come together as brothers and sisters. A mysterious power will help you if you come together as brothers and sisters. Master said that it takes many lives to build the mansion of friendship. And he says such friendships are not accidental. And so let's ask ourselves this question: how do we know who our true friends are? Well, he taught us that we can recognize who they are by the attunement we feel with them. It's this natural, immediate harmony you feel. It's not often physical attraction, doesn't have to be, and it's not mere familiarity. It's soul recognizing soul. And you all have experienced that. There's something deep in the recesses of your consciousness that says, yes, I know them. They're my dear friend. But it's not enough to say, oh, we found each other again. It's a divine opportunity, a sacred responsibility this lifetime to love them more purely and to support them on their journey back to God. To be that kind of friend. And for example, when divine friendship becomes the foundation of any real relationship, including marriage, it becomes our spiritual journey for self-transformation and growth. And I want to share with you a beautiful testimonial. The lady writes, I had to learn how to love through experience, reflection, and mistakes I could not avoid. Looking back over 2 marriages, I realized I carried 2 misunderstandings. That love alone could sustain a marriage, and that marriage itself could resolve what I had not yet resolved within myself. Over time, I learned that before we can love well, we must grow in self-awareness and understand what creates harmony and what doesn't. Today, I've been happily married for 13 years, and my husband and I were friends for more than 30 years before we married. And that friendship remains the foundation of our relationship. We speak simply and honestly about daily life, responsibilities, family matters, and so on, and many of those choices that naturally arise, and these could easily become points of tension. But we talk, and we pause until emotions have settled, or we simply agree to see things differently. In this way, differences do not become division, and understanding makes room to grow. One of the joys of our relationship is that we allow each other to be fully ourselves. My husband enjoys fishing. I do not. Sometimes I happily go with him, enjoy the beauty and quiet of nature. Other times he heads to the lake while I spend time with interests that nourish me. We delight in supporting each other's individuality. We see our home almost as one would view an ashram. Not a place free from challenges, but a place of practice, self-awareness, and spiritual growth. And sometimes I think if God were to look upon our life together, not for perfection, but for sincerity, perhaps he would recognize something sacred unfolding in our life. I think, I'd like to know what you think, that this relation has the mark of spiritual maturity. Yes? They honor and respect the soul in one another, and through that friendship, they've allowed divine love to express itself, and every day, and they're growing. And this brings us to another point. Another question: where do we find the strength to love like that? Because sometimes love gets very tired, or hurt, or misunderstood, or disappointed, isn't it? Well, the answer is we cannot continuously give what we haven't received. And so meditation is where the heart must return again and again and again to drink deeply from the reservoir of that divine love that's within us and waiting for us to partake of it. You know, meditation is not merely a spiritual practice. We shouldn't view it as something routine. I have to fit it in. That's where our soul meets and merges with a cosmic beloved. That's where our spiritual life becomes the divine romance with a cosmic lover. And our communion with God does not end when we open our eyes and leave our meditation seat, does it? What do? We take that living, loving presence with us into every activity. And that's when periodically throughout the day, you can say, my God, my divine Lord, you are with me, always with me. You are never apart from me. Thou and I are never apart. You are mine, and I am thine. I love you, Lord. We should do that upon awakening in the morning and many times throughout the day, and in our meditations and before we retire. Do we do it? Will we do it from today forward? And meditation is also a sacred place where God and Guru come to intercede for us, to lift the burden of our karma, and to protect us from making decisions that would not be in our best interest. And I want to share an experience of a devotee who in her meditation and in her prayer time, she received divine guidance in a very difficult situation. My husband and I love each other deeply, but his long-standing addiction placed an enormous strain on our marriage. I did everything I could think of to help him, but nothing seemed to change. And as the years went by, the situation became overwhelming. And I have to admit that there were times when I felt I simply couldn't go on. And some people even encouraged me to leave. But something deep within me kept holding me back. Finally, I did reach a point where I had made up my mind to leave. But before I did, I turned to God in prayer one more time. And that's when I heard these words inwardly say, if you give up now, you will have failed your test and you will have to revisit that lesson again. Imagine. That moment was a turning point for me. I realized my role was not to change my husband. My role was to love him with greater patience, compassion, and faith in God. And not long after, my husband faced a serious illness, and it became the catalyst for his own transformation. He faced his addiction, he overcame it, and little by little, our relationship began to heal. That experience deepened my trust in God because I realized that when he asked me to remain, he was not asking me to walk that path alone. He walked with me, and he gave me the strength and guidance to do so. Looking back, following his guidance opened the door for his grace to work in our life, making room for healing, real change, and a new beginning for both of us. When this devotee shared this with me, I was awestruck. Because you see how God responds, Guru responds, they intercede. And when you attune your consciousness with him in meditation and ask for the guidance, night and day, asking, guide me, what is your will, protect me, help me make the right decisions, they respond. Now, I do want to be clear that love doesn't always mean remaining in a difficult situation. It depends. And sometimes love can mean that we do have to part ways, but we can still do so with kindness, with love and compassion. But again, it depends. I want to make that clear. And this is why every tradition teaches divine love. Every spiritual tradition teaches it. It's at the heart of all true paths. And this is why the great ones have come on earth. Jesus Christ, Bhagavan Sri Krishna, in our own era, Paramahansa Yogananda ji, to awaken us to the greatest reality of all, divine love. Divine love, when we're expressing that, we're expressing the language of the soul. The language of the soul. Divine love belongs to no religion and to no nation. It lives in our heart. It lives in our heart. And all true masters are embodiments of divine love. And I think that's probably why our Guru Paramahansa Ji, his life touches us so deeply. As a Prem avatar, an incarnation of love, his whole life was immersed in the love of God. And Brother Bhumananda read this quote, and I'm going to repeat it. Near the end of his life, he shared with Dayama this message. It wasn't just for her, but it's for us to take into our hearts. When I am gone, only love can take my place. Be so drunk with the love of God that you will know nothing else but God. That's a meditation in and of itself. What does that mean for each one of us individually? To be drunk with the love of God, that we know nothing but the love of God. And then he says, give that love to all. And those words were deeply etched in Dayamata's consciousness, and throughout her life she quietly reflected that, and we know, most of us know about her, and you'll be reading her reminiscences in the new book, and we've heard her lectures, and we know who she is and what she's done for this work. And I'd like to share a personal experience, one of several that I had with beloved Ma, that demonstrates her unconditional love and compassion. There was a time in my life as a young nun when I was being especially hard on myself. No matter what I did, it just never seemed to be good enough. I had very unrealistic expectations about myself, and that's usually the ego speaking. But I had this mantra going on in my mind over and over again. I'm not very good at this. I'm not good. I'm not very good at all. And I was in a depressed state, self-created. One day, Mom called me to her office, and it was during that time, and I thought, oh no. So I went to her office, and sitting outside of her office in the hallway was her little dog, a Bichon Frise named BG. And we finished our work, and I left her office, and I went on into the hallway, and BG began to bark. And Ma got up from her desk and came out into the hallway, and she said, BG, no barking, no. And then she said, come here, dear. And she took my hand with her one hand, and with her other arm, and I'm going to demonstrate, she started stroking my arm like this, and she said, she's good, BG. She's very good. She's good. No barking. Be nice. But I knew at that moment that she wasn't talking to the dog. With her motherly touch and her unconditional love, she gave me the blessing that I needed right at that moment. And a tremendous weight was lifted from my consciousness. And as we know, that love shone through Dayamata. It shone through our revered Mrinalini Mata, and it shines through our revered president, Brother Chiranandaji, who carry Master's torch of love for the world, that we might all awaken to that love. And one last question, what about us? Can we not also carry that torch of love? As disciples of these great masters, we have a responsibility because we've been drawn to this path. We have a responsibility to walk in their footsteps and to cultivate within ourselves the divine love of God and to become instruments of that love as we allow that love to flow through us into the world that needs it so much. So in closing, I would like to share a few excerpts from a beautiful prose poem by Guruji entitled A Scripture of Love, and I encourage you to read it in its entirety. It's in one of his anthologies called The Divine Romance, But these are excerpts. And as I read them, perhaps you close your eyes and take in these words, because they highlight what we've been touching upon tonight. Guruji said, I sought love in many lives. I shed bitter tears of separation and repentance to know what love is. I sacrificed everything, all attachment and delusion, to learn at last that I am in love, with God alone. Then I drank love through all true hearts. I saw that He is the one cosmic lover, the one fragrance that permeates all the variegated blossoms of love in the garden of life. The Lord ever silently whispers to you, I am love. But to experience the giving and the gift of love, I've divided myself into three: love, lover, and beloved. My love is beautiful, pure, eternally joyous, and I taste it in many ways, through many forms. My love is playing hide and seek in all human hearts, that each might learn to discover and worship not the temporal human receptacles of my love, but my love itself, dancing from heart to heart. Without speaking a word, I have loved you always. I alone can truly say, I love you. For I loved you before you were born. My love gives you life and sustains you, even at this moment. So, dear brothers and sisters, may we always remember that God is love, and His plan for creation can only be rooted in love. His plan for creation can only be rooted in love. So may God and the great ones bless us all. Jai Guru, Jai Guru, Jai Guru.